When the rabbis tried to determine the identity of the us in Genesis 1:26, you'd figure that since they are so gifted in wisdom and Jewish literature, that would be a simple and easy task. You'd also figure that the rabbis would tell you that before Jesus was born, Jews, namely a Jew by the name of Philo, thought the us in Genesis 1:26 were multiple gods. One he called the Logos, or the Memra, or the Word. In fact, Targum Onkelos, which Rashi uses in his commentary, and the Talmud instructs the Jew to review, says in Genesis 3:8, they heard the voice of the word of Adonai Elohim moving in the garden at the breeze in the evening of the day. This word, later on in Christianity, or should I say Judaism, became flesh, which was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's expectation. It is a conspiracy theory to think, and Jewish history confirms this, that the doctrine of the Trinity started at Nicaea.
I didn't want to touch on the Council of Nicaea because I feel like that's a very big turning point in the history of the church. So can you just, in summary, tell our audience like what exactly happened during that time? Because obviously, with the Trinity and all these ideas, they came to fruition.
When its predecessor was around in Judaism long before the time of Philo. The only conspiracy that should be talked about, in fact, I do not even know if it's being talked about in my circles, is the conspiracy to hide the word of the Lord in the Targums. And this is according to the Jewish encyclopedia, but I digress. Though the Jewish encyclopedia does not use the word hiding, yes, they were very clever. And maybe they work for Jews for Jesus. I honestly think they do. Anyhow, what I'll focus on here is the rabbinical attempt to claim that God is talking to angels, plural, or that God is talking to the dirt when interpreting the us in Genesis 1:26. Since from my understanding, and you can let me know in the comment section, these are the only two real contenders in interpreting this passage. And frankly, it doesn't matter if you have another one. They will be proven wrong too. As we move forward, I think the best way to solve this is with a crazy parable about a drug addict, so we can counter the rabbinical game that seems to just be, how do we confuse people the most so that they don't make any parallels? I really mean that statement. When a person's heart is hard according to Jesus, and this is my interpretation, and as I have said many, many times before, I probably sound like a broken record, if you know what that is. We need to use a parable to bring that person to a place of realization, to bring that person out of a lack of knowledge. And since more and more Jewish people are coming to the realization of the truth of the New Testament, it shouldn't be that hard for them and for all the others to understand as well. We really need to resolve this, since even well-known Christian theologians are claiming God might be talking to his divine counsel, or even angels. Christianity has a severe framing problem. Even well-known, well-intended, great apologists have massive problems framing arguments. So we will attempt to correct that, unless this frame has already been used. Let me know in the comments section if it has been used, but I have not heard it. Here's the short drug addict parable. Have you ever had a friend who was a bit paranoid coming off of drugs? Maybe you were that friend. And you were trying to bring this friend back to reality. It'll make some sense in the end, so stick with me, please. So you meet up with this person at a coffee shop, and she, your friend, said, this man that just came in the black coat, has been following me. I think he's a cop. You look over at the man in the black coat and you notice that the man walks to the back of the coffee shop and a few minutes later appears at the front again in a Starbucks uniform. And you look at your friend and with deep compassion, you say, it looks like you were both just heading to the same coffee shop because he works here. And then she says something like, no, he's pretending to work here. He's really CIA. Well, now you know that you are in for some interesting tasting coffee. But what you attempted to do there was to make a parallel obvious. This person in the black coat only seems to be following you because they were really working at the same place that you were both heading. If you have been in this situation enough, then you are well trained in the apologetic technique of parallelism, a true student of Rabbi Hillel, which is part of the foundation of understanding Tanakh in the New Testament and the Targums. The debate in Genesis 1:26 is very, very similar to the debate we are having in the coffee shop. In the coffee shop, you tried to use a parallelism, a parallel that the person in the black coat is now wearing a uniform to convince your friend that they're mistaken. But the influence from the drugs that your friend is under at the moment is too strong. Similarly, the influence of the rabbinic culture on the Jewish people is, as of right now, also too strong. There's a saying, politics is downstream from culture. That culture is slipping away from the rabbis, and they know that. So let's try to speed this up. Historical Judaism didn't always presume, though some of you might be surprised to hear this, since you're educated by the rabbis, that angels and mud were the only likely possibilities of whom God was probably talking to when he was creating man in the image of us. In the ancient form of Judaism that was practiced before the time of Jesus, they were much more open to other possible interpretations. Interpretations that are now banned and considered heresy by the Pharisees, who hijacked Judaism and threatened the Jewish people with alienation from the community and even death for standing against them, shortly after the sacking of the temple in 70 AD. For believing in and attempting to espouse any mediation tradition, even now. If you say that the person wearing the black coat works in Starbucks, you could get in trouble by the rabbis, yes. According to Alan Siegel in The Two Powers of Heaven, once the debate is reconstructed, that is, the debate of the two powers in heaven, we're able to understand some of the issues affecting the exegesis. By the time of the consolidation of the Rabbinic authority at Yavne, Council of Jamnia, and the attempt at a new Jewish orthodoxy, mediation traditions were seen as a clear and present danger within Rabbinic Judaism. Yavne was all about blunting the growth of the Messianic Jewish community. It's more than likely where the Pharisees came up with the idea to blot out the names of the Jews who believed in Jesus from the synagogue registry. Had they not done this, the Messianic Judaism would have usurped Pharisaical rule. And Messianic Judaism, I believe, will soon usurp Pharisaic rule, rabbis. But I digress. Now let's focus on this statement by Alan Siegel and an attempt at a new Jewish orthodoxy. This means that Judaism, which lost the debate a long time ago about the black coat, had to change the rules about how to practice Judaism in order to survive. To help you understand it from a Messianic Jewish or Christian perspective, because this can be quite confusing, it would be like Jehovah's Witnesses taking over Christianity and then deciding how we practice our religion. And then every time we call them out for heresy, they take away our friends and, if possible, they kick us out of the state of Israel by revoking our citizenship. Oh. Just imagine that kind of power. The Judaism being practiced now would be a form of heresy to King David, to Moses and the prophets. This is why there is no real discussion between the Messianic Jewish community and the Rabbinic community. It's not because the Rabbinic community is ostracizing the Messianic Jews. They hide behind that anti-Semitic trope, which is just fake ostracism with their fellow Jews, because they are scared to admit that they fear a debate that they will surely be humiliated in. I mean, unless you keep debating third-rate candidates. Judaism changed at Jamnia. That fact is all over the place. But here is a man who says that the Judaism of King David is the same as the Judaism being practiced now, even though Jews and Jewish history, going all the way back to Philo, contradicts him. And before I play the video, let me say this word again: heresy.
Is it correct?
The key thing of Judaism is that nothing changes. I mean, that's the key of our faith. If the moment somebody says it changed, we're out. Goodbye. You remember in our last conversation, I said I have nothing new to say. And that's what a religious Jew does. There's nothing new about religion. And if you're looking for innovations, you don't want to look at Judaism. Go somewhere else.
There is a small movement within Orthodox Judaism that has begun to see the light. But again, I digress. So let us move on to the two most credible ways the rabbis have interpreted Genesis 1:26 and then give the Starbucks interpretation. The Rambam says that the us is God talking to mud. And the simplest way to rebut this is, and I am surprised that I have not heard it before for some weird reason, maybe I'm wrong, is that Elohim in Genesis 1:26 is not written in the dual. You see, Jews believe that God is one, so do Trinitarians. But when you look at passages like Genesis 1:2, now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. A Trinitarian sees God's Holy Spirit as distinct, though one with God. And then in the next verse, then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. A Trinitarian sees God talking apart from his Holy Spirit, or at least two of the three so far in the book of Genesis. And since there are words, we could even go 2, 3, but let's move on. For a Jew, they only see one. This is a problem for the Rambam, who claims God is talking to mud. Let me explain. Because for the Rambam to be correct, Elohim would have to be written in the dual, because it is only God and mud. But Elohim is written in the at least 3 plural. Hebrew has 2 plurals, one for 2 and one for 3 or more. A common argument for Jehovah's Witnesses is that the word Trinity is not written in the Bible. It is one of their introductions to a conversation which introduces the lack of knowledge to the unknowing Christian. But knowing that Elohim is at least 3, and then proving 3 is in the word Trinity, but spelt as Elohim, that would make Jehovah's Witnesses incorrect as usual. I mean, they're correct that Trinity isn't in the Bible, but the definition is. The second most popular position, before we go on to the Starbucks interpretation, or the obviously most likely interpretation, like it's so obvious, man, like come on, is that God was talking to angels or his divine council, even though that would mean that angels helped him create man, or the divine council did, because the story is not framed as a consultation no matter how you look at it. Whoever God is talking to is helping him make the man in his image. Now, we have no biblical evidence in Tanakh that angels have the power to create, and no matter what you think, that is very important. We cannot just ignore that fact. But the answer is only 80% yes, 80% incorrect. If you wrote this on a kindergarten Sunday school test, Rabbi Singer, I would give you a mark of 20%. The reason being is because there is one angel that is distinct from the rest of the angels, and is even in some cases is called Yahweh in the Bible, or the word of the Lord in the Jewish Targums. This angel does many things that only Yahweh, Rabbi, say that with me, Yahweh, come on, you can say it, don't worry, that only Yahweh can do, or Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh has done. So it would be highly likely that this was the angel. So it is not angels, but an angel that was helping God with his spirit that was hovering over the face of the deep to create man in the image of us. So ask Rabbi Singer on Tanakh Talk this question, and hopefully he doesn't equivocate. Since the angel of the Lord has the same powers as Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, could it be the angel of the Lord in Genesis 1:26, creating with the us rather than God, talking with the angels or creating with mud, since the frame doesn't support that? What the hell am I talking about, you say? There is no one in the Bible that has the power of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh other than Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. Well, if that were true, then all of us Christians should go down to the Bet Din and have our foreskins. Should we have foreskins? If not, just cut. We should have them cut off. Yes, we should. But if there is another Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in the Bible that at times works with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, oftentimes called the angel of the Lord, or the word of the Lord in the Targums, or in the wisdom of Solomon, or the Son of Man in Daniel, to help accomplish Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh's goals, then it would be obvious that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was also aiding Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in making man along with God's Spirit in Genesis 1:26. Now that's a mouthful. This would satisfy the three plural in Hebrew, or the Trinity plural for you Jehovah Witnesses. If this assertion that I just made was correct, then the Starbucks interpretation would be that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and his spirit created man in the image of us, right? You can still believe that it was angels or mud if you want to, but the most likely interpretation would be Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh was helping Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, right? I mean, unless you want to believe in conspiracy theories, the logic is undeniable. So here is an example, and I am not the first one to claim this. A lot of what you are going to hear used to be accepted doctrine within Judaism according to Alan Siegel until the Jewish Council of Nicaea, which is called the Council of Yavne or Jamnia. Every Jewish person knows the answer to this question. Who, and every Christian, I mean, if you've watched the movie with Moses in it, okay, even if you're a Muslim, you know this too. Who brought the children of Israel out of Egypt? I'll give you 5 seconds. Now you say, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, you are correct. 100% you got on the test. Then it shall come about when the Lord, that's capital L-O-R-D, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God brings you into the land that he swore your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you great and splendid cities, which you did not build, and houses full of good things, which you did not fill, and carved out cisterns, which you did not carve out, vineyards and olive trees, which you did not plant, and you eat and are satisfied. This happened in 1948 and in Egypt. This is a dual or parable prophecy, but I already did a video on this. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You are correct. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh brought Israel out of Egypt and out of all the nations where he sent them. But, that's a big but in Judges, it says, now the angel of the Lord came up from Gilgad Bochim, and he said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into the land which I swore to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And as for you, you shall not make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land. You shall tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. What is this thing you have done? Yes, the history of 1948 was repeated. The Jewish people sort of made a covenant with the inhabitants of the land and didn't tear down those altars. But let's focus on the discussion at hand. Well, what do we learn from these verses? We learn that Yud-Heh Vav-Heh and the angel of the Lord are working together as if they were one or something. I mean, it's obvious why God says all over the place He is one, right? I mean, it's like they're one. I don't know. Is that confusing? How could the angel of the Lord be doing what Yud-Heh Vav-Heh does? It is the angel of the Lord that led the children of Israel out of Egypt, according to Judges. But something else to point out in these verses in Judges, the angel of the Lord says, I will never break my covenant with you. So again, my question to you is, who made a covenant with the children of Israel? Let's go to Leviticus 26:44. Yet in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them, nor will I loathe them as to destroy them, breaking my covenant with them, for I am the Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, their God. According to this verse, Yud-Heh Vav-Heh made the covenant with the children of Israel, including Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But according to Judges, the angel of the Lord made the covenant with the children of Israel. Here is that one thing again. It's like they are one or something. What an easy way to explain the Trinity. The angel of the Lord and God, again, I am no conspiracy theorist, but I think it is very obvious by now who made man with God. The angel of the Lord was aiding along with God's Spirit. It is not a big leap to go from angels to angel. Say, angels, angel. Make sure you tell Rabbi Singer that and all the other rabbis. I mean, to believe anything else is like believing the guy in the black coat works for the CIA. I'll end with an argument made by one of our church fathers, Justin Martyr, who lived between 100 and 165 AD. It starts on page 221 in The Two Powers of Heaven. I'll end with this because we'll get into some writings from the Targums, which will also lead to that Jew named Philo. I just want you to know that we can go on and on with this, and maybe I'll do a part 2, since there's always a way to equivocate this to some extent. And there is sure to be some honest people in the comments section looking for some real answers. But I'd recommend that you read this book, Two Powers in Heaven. It has a wealth of information in it about how long Judaism accepted and tried to condemn the fact that God, though being one, was represented in multiple beings. We all know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. I have spoken about it being a misunderstood end-time sign on this channel. It starts in Genesis 18. It is an end-time sign, but how it is an end-time sign has been misunderstood. Now the word appeared to Abraham by the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. When he raised up his eyes, he looked, and behold, 3 men were standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran in to the tent door to meet them and bowed down to the ground and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please do not pass your servant by, but let a little water be brought and wash your feet and make yourselves comfortable under the tree. And I will bring a piece of bread so that you may refresh yourselves. After that, you may go on, since you have visited your servant. And they said, Do as you have said. Now, Lord here is in capital letters. So this is the Tetragrammaton Yud-Heh Vav-Heh, or Yehovah, or Yahweh, however you pronounce the Tetragrammaton. Don't worry, God is a very forgiving person if you mispronounce his name. Is talking with Abraham, and we'll skip to verse 9. Then they said to him, Where is your wife Sarah? And he said, There, in the tent. He said, I will certainly return to you this time next year, and behold, your wife Sarah will have a son. And Sarah was listening at the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in age. Sarah was past childbearing, so Sarah laughed to herself, saying, After After I have become old, I am to have pleasure, my Lord also being old. But the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I actually give birth to a child when I am so old? Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah denied it, however, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, but no, you did laugh. So Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh called out Sarah for laughing. So Abraham is talking to Yahweh. Now, Yahweh and the two men are on their way towards Sodom, and Yahweh stops to talk with Abraham while the other angels continue walking. And in verse 22, it says that Abraham was standing before Yahweh, and he begins negotiating with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in order to try to save the people living in the city. So the Lord said, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare the entire city on their account. Abraham negotiates all the way down to 10. And then the last verse of the chapter says, as soon as he had finished speaking to Abraham, the Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh departed, and Abraham returned to his place. So, again, ad nauseum, I'm saying this. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is here on earth talking with Abraham. That is undeniable unless you believe in conspiracy theories, right? Now, as Justin Martyr and many others have pointed out, how Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh judges Sodom and Gomorrah is very interesting to someone who wants to prove Trinitarianism. Then the Lord, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh out of heaven. Well. We have one Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh in heaven, and we have one Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh on earth. Two Yahwehs. So what about Abraham? Now Abraham got up in the morning, and he went to the place where he stood before Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the surrounding area. And behold, he saw the smoke of the land ascending like the smoke of a furnace. Where Abraham stood negotiating with Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, there are two Yud-Heh-Vav-Hehs, just like Christianity has always claimed. And in the Targum of Jonathan, it is the word of the Lord raining fire and brimstone down from heaven. And the word of the Lord had caused showers of favor to descend upon Sodom and Sedom and Amorah, to the intent that they might work repentance, but they did not. So that they said, wickedness is not manifest before the Lord. Behold, then there are now sent down upon them sulfur and fire from before the word of the Lord from heaven. We believe as Christians that this word of the Lord again became flesh and dwelt among us. So we can no longer talk about a mediation tradition. What a joke. Once the debate is reconstructed, that is the debate of the two powers in heaven, we are able to understand some of the issues affecting the exegesis. By the time of the consolidation of the rabbinic authority at Yavne, Council of Jamnia, and an attempt at a new Jewish orthodoxy, mediation traditions were seen as a clear and present danger. And he blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who redeemed me from all evil. It's like a Messiah almost, this angel redeeming people. Wow. Bless the boys. And may my name live on in them and the names of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and may they grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. I think it is completely reasonable, in fact, highly likely that Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, or the word of the Lord, who in another place is called one like the Son of Man. One like the Son of Man was coming and came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, honor, and a kingdom. Whoa, a kingdom. So that all peoples and nations and populations and languages might serve him. Interesting. Who is helping God? Who is part of the us in Genesis 1:26? And I think any answer that does not consider this is part of a society that has become professionals at repressing the truth and has used extrajudicial exegesis to brainwash its population. The real conspiracy is the attempt by the rabbis to hide the word of the Lord in the Targums. Well, because it sounds really Christian if you don't. So, I understand why. All you have to do to confirm this is look at the Encyclopedia of Judaism. It looks like these entries were written from a member of Jews for Jesus. All the references from this video will be in the show notes below. I'll end here and probably do another video on these entries from the Encyclopedia of Judaism. Jesus is the God of the Jewish people. There's no denying it. He was the one who led you out of Egypt. He was the one who gave you your homeland back after World War II. And he is the one of the us, creating man in their image. Or you can believe the guy in the black coat works for the CIA.